Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now, a segment that we run on this channel where we revisit games from yesteryear, at least 12 months old and removed, but think of it more of an opportunity for Scarlett to shout out his favourite games, and I tend to line this up with a sale as well. So today, we're looking at The Long Dark. This is one of my favourite games ever, however, funnily enough, I just haven't played it in a very long time. It's fascinating coming back to it, and also worth highlighting, yeah, it's on probably the deepest sale it's ever been on, 90% off. It's going for like $5. So you're mad not to pick it up and give it a go. But yeah, absolutely the greatest survival game I've ever played. There is a slight caveat. There are two modes to this. One is called Winter Mute, which is essentially the campaign story mode, and that's not what you're playing it for. What you really want to play this for is the survival mode. I think you can buy that on standalone or whatever, and weirdly the way that their pricing's going at the moment, you can just bundle both of them together cheaper, but look, I'm not necessarily getting into the economics of it all. Have a look at the sale and work it out yourself. But know that this game had a really unusual life cycle, and it's a really cool example of a developer, at least this is my interpretation from the consumer side, of a developer kind of swallowing their pride and realizing that what the appeal is of this game, which is the actual core mechanical survival loop within a really interesting world and not the narrative story mode, they've sort of soft pivoted over the years into survival first, and maybe we'll finish Winter Mute whenever we get around to it. So the quick history lesson is, when this launched in early access, all it really was the survival sandbox mode as a bit of a sort of soft proof of concept, right? This is what the game is, you can pick it up now, but we haven't implemented the actual centerpiece, which is this Winter Mute story, which we will release in 5-episode blocks, something like that. Anyway, they kind of caught lightning by accident. Dare I say, this feels more like a success story version of all the studios that shovel out, you know, stories going for the feels, but they're walking sims. You know, they use the fact that it's a game as an excuse, a package to ship their kind of bad story. And I'm not necessarily trying to fire shots at Hinterland Studios, but it feels like they were of that mindset, but instead they kind of accidentally made an excellent game too. So the story's kind of miserable, and you know, it's about an estranged couple. They have a child died in the past. They have to come together, deliver some bloody thing. This apocalypse happens. Helicopter crashes. And yeah, it's got the survival components in there, but it's mixed in with busy work tasking that just kind of, it's not that great. At least when I played the first couple of chapters, it's still not fully released. The 5th chapter has still been delayed, because that's what I'm saying. It's very apparent that the survival mode's what everyone wanted. And so over the course of these years, because it's been like 10 years or something, they've put that as secondary, and they've gone to a point where they've launched kind of season passes for the survival mode, and they've just really fleshed that out. More biomes, more tasks, more sort of narrative component. Like I think it's called Tales from the Far Territory. So they essentially put DLC expansion stuff into the survival mode, and it's taken so long it's hard to really divine out, but I think maybe they were releasing DLC while they were still early access, that sort of stuff, which is a bit whatever. So it's been an unusual development, but to me the takeaway, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on it, but it's kind of important to me, and I cover all these games and I see things a little bit differently now that I YouTube these days as opposed to when I first picked this up, which was pre-channel. But yeah, it does really seem like the developers got in this game to tell their story, which most gamers don't really give a shit about, let's be honest, or at least the ones drawn to a survival gameplay loop. They pivoted, they leaned into giving the customer what they wanted. Maybe Winter Mute will finally fully release, but who cares, because no one really cares. Anyway, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but there's an interesting history lesson in there. And the takeaway is that the studio reacted to the fans and have just made it more and more and more robust as a survival mode. In fact, going back in the menus, you know, survival is above Winter Mute when you're picking which mode that you're going into. And to me, that sort of confirms all my theory. That's what this is about. Anyway, the loop is, it's almost unusual because a lot of survival crafting, which is the big genre these days. It's base building, multiplayer focused. You know, Valheim was a bit of a one-off and I really enjoyed it, but a lot of them are just copying each other and they're all slop, right? So this isn't really that. This is much more distilled. As far as base building goes, from what I understand, they've added some stuff over the course of the years, but that's more about like refurbing a cabin that you might find and moving furniture around in it. But the big focus on this isn't about building bases. It's about surviving. It's very hard. It's not PvP. There are no other players. There are no other people. Not really. I think they introduced a trader thing, but even then that's a voice on a radio and you can turn it off. But it's you versus the cruel elements in a post-apocalyptica where I can't actually remember the specifics. I don't even know if they really tell you, but it feels to me like a magnetic pole reversal or something like that, right? You just happen to be stuck in the Canadian wilderness. There's no electricity, no nothing, except the frozen cold. So a big part of the early loop, and me dipping back in to play some more for B-roll, is trying to muddle out where you are, get a little bit of an idea, a bit of a familiarity, and it doesn't hold your hand. Even if you go on the easier modes, I can't remember, Pleasant Valley or something like that is the OG starting area. It's recommended for newbies, and I jumped back in there and I sort of remember parts of it, but you're not going to have a compass. It's bitingly cold winter, so you probably can't divine north, south, east, west with the sun anyway. There's a rudimentary navigation mapping system, which I'm trying to do in my playthrough at the moment, but it's difficult because a lot of the way actions work in this game, like for mapping, for example, is you'll get your charcoal, you map the area, and before you confirm, it'll tell you, I don't know, it's going to take 15 minutes or something like that. And it will speed that timer through. The problem is that, especially in the early going, you're probably going to be at like negative temperature, let's call it, right? So every second that goes past, you're losing body heat because you get thrown straight in there, you know, in a baseball cap and just casual clothes. You are not equipped for winter. So you got to be really careful passing time doing a lot of these activities if you're not ready for them because, you know, it will just instantly drain your heat bar. So even just mapping a little bit of the area that I'm around is tricky until you rug up. And so the early parts of a playthrough, and I'm no expert of course, but they will be going around trying to find the remnants of humanity. I found like a lookout tower and I managed to work my way down to the dam, which is part of the starting area, and that's a bit of a loot-filled area, but you have to be able to navigate it in the dark with flares or something like that. But trying to rug up, put on multiple layers, that sort of thing to fight the cold, that's a really big deal. You have multiple little health widgets, little circle mini health bars, and it all feeds back into a main health bar. So you've got temperature, which we've covered. You've got food and water, pretty self-explanatory. And you've got tiredness. And if any of these hit 0, it will start overdraining into your actual master health bar, the thing that will get you killed if it goes to 0. And healing that is a huge embuggerance. It takes a long time. And you can get afflictions, like I nearly got frostbite or whatever, or hypothermia. And shaking that off is something that can take days. And in this game, surviving for a day is a big deal. So essentially you don't want to let any of those bars drain. You have to really police it and stay on top of it. And then beyond the initial, let's say, looting and finding areas and getting a little stash together and making maybe a little base, you have to really start thinking about living off the land. How are you going to do that? Water is one of the first complex systems that you'll have to overcome. So you can pretty much get snow from anywhere, but it has to be melted, and in turn it has to be boiled. So it's actually not going to make you sick if you drink it. Further to that, you know, wildlife, you can throw little rocks at bunnies and then break their neck and cook them and skin them and that. If you're lucky, or it depends how you look at luck, you might come across a frozen, ravaged deer corpse because some wolves have been at it, which also indicates there's wolves around. And if you set up there, you can make like a campfire to try and thaw it. If you've got a hatchet or a knife, you can cut venison up and that sort of thing. You'll have to contend with hostile wildlife like wolves, and that is no laughing matter. You get absolutely mangled in a fight with them. It's best avoided, but sometimes it can't be helped because they want to eat you. And even eating wolves, if I recall correctly, is not really a sustainable diet. There was like parasites or something like that. I can't remember. But they've added all sorts of other mechanics that I haven't even touched on yet, but I'm familiar with. There's a scurvy component now. I mentioned the trader. And then there's this cougar thing, which created all sorts of hubbub when it came out. And it's almost like a Resident Evil nemesis. It's like a super boss that stalks you and keeps you honest. So if you stay too static and set up base in one area, this cougar will figure out where you are and come basically ruin your day. Anyway, like I said, this is just a smidge and a bit of a history lesson on the studio and how I see the game to have evolved. But at current point in time right now, I think it's still safe to say it is probably the best single-player survival, pure survival game on the market, and it's just getting massive support as well. It's turned out to be a very big success. They have a lot of updates. I haven't followed it as much in recent times, but from what I understand, they're still doing it where they just keep putting out videos and updates. There's a lot of production quality around that, and that means a lot to me as a customer and should to you. So if you're looking for something like this to really get invested in, because it takes a certain kind of patient mind that can handle punishment, then yeah, absolutely check it out. And it's going for dollars at the moment, so you would be mad not to. Anyway, team, that's enough waffling. I'm obviously a big fan. You should check it out. Might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.